Business meeting of the Parkrose School District is called to order at 6:30 on Monday, June 25th. Tonight, we have a quorum, and one member will be participating via phone since Sonia is on her vacation with her family, but takes her position very seriously. We appreciate this, Sonia.
Oh, no problem.
And now at 6:33, I will close the business meeting and open the budget hearing. Cherie Lewis is going to talk to us for around 5 minutes or less.
I will let Eric arrive and get situated,
Thank you.
since he just arrived.
Eric is with us, so we have a total board. Bad traffic.
So what you have before you right now is basically a resolution that will appropriate the funds for 18-19 and appropriate and allow us to submit our documents to the county assessor of what our tax limitation is for general fund permanent rate and our debt bonded rate. So those are the limits that we have to have. The rate for debt, it said what our debt payment is, and a 90% collections rate based on the assessed rate that we currently have. What you saw in your packet is a series of things. The ED1 that you saw is basically the public notice, the big document. And the next document is a Schedule A, which is a summary overall of what we did from proposed to approved and now the adopted. So basically, the difference is we're gonna go from 60,721,000 to 60,726,000. We're gonna go up $5,086.
Oh, wow.
That's all we're going up.
Yay.
There's a series of 3 changes that happened.
Okay, there's no change.
Not much. There's a lot of change, a lot of lines in there because we changed workers' comp rates. So lots of lines changed, but because what we did is basically the rates changed, so we offset something else, so the net effect was 0 for those. We had the custodial changes that Tom and his staff, we had staff move of all the custodial staff that were lead custodians. Those are in, but the net change is 0 for him. Because that was one of the agreements. If Tom, as one of the custodian gets a pay raise, Tom had to take a reduction somewhere else. So the net change was 0 for him. The $5,000 that you see as a change is the increase in the pre-K grant, a small increase in their allocation, but a $3,200 increase in an additional grant that they got off the pre-K for the Shaver site. So that is the total change from when you last saw this to now. So what has to happen now is we have to basically agree as a board or disagree, whatever the case may be, and take the resolution at the end of the budget hearing and adopt the funds that we have now. Okay? Any questions on the resolution? Anything on the debt? Any questions on the changes?
Hey, Cherie,
Yes, ma'am?
how many more years do we have on the bond?
The bond, I believe, matures in 2032.
2032.
But the instrument to pay the $15 million QZAP occurs in 2023, because I had somebody call me the other day. We're the only school district in the state that actually is administering it correctly, believe it or not.
No, I can't believe it because you're standing there.
Because part of the appropriations that you see allows you to put a certain portion of your property taxes every month in what you call a dedicated fund, so it'll help us pay the lump sum $15 million. And we normally don't pay $15 million in 1 year, right? So what we'll stop paying is the 2011 A bond to pay the 2011 B bond, which is all the QZAT money that we were in fear of losing the first year I got here. So it will become due on 2023.
Okay.
And you've not been paying any principal on that portion of the bond at all since we got it.
Right, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. And we have been, I'm presuming we have been making some interest on,
The only interest that you make is the small interest in the remaining balance at the time that you have every year.
right,
And this last 3 years that I've been here, we've made probably about $25,000 in interest
okay,
as we've used down the biggest, the remaining portion.
right,
The biggest interest that you had at the time when you sold the proceeds.
right.
So you will never make as much as that.
No, that is an impossibility. Okay.
Sounds like it was yesterday.
I know it, it feels like it, except you and I were not on
Like you said.
the board.
So,
Was in the Bible, like you said.
most of you will not get a new book,
Yeah,
but it will be available after the 15th of July, which is when it's due to the state. So now everything is done. We just got the public notice. We'll put everything together and it will back out on the state website on the 15th of July.
and once everything is finalized through the state and we vote tonight, then it will be on our district website.
Right. What you see tonight, what you saw in those 5 attachments, will go up on the district website tomorrow.
Okay,
But this big book of 200 some odd pages
Yes.
won't go onto the district website until July 15th.
okay. Very good. As if anybody,
Any other questions?
Thank you, Sheree.
we have citizens' comments at this time. If you have comment, please fill out a card and you have 3 minutes to express yourself. Seeing none, we will close the budget hearing and reopen the business meeting. And Dave, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Dave. Presentations and recognition. Mr. Seha.
I'm sorry. I gotta start. Could you say that again?
We are into introducing the new administrator.
Yeah, so Samantha Regacious is our new principal that we recently offered to at Russell Elementary. She can't be here tonight. She is still employed with Portland Public and actually is helping do some hiring. She needed to do some interviews tonight. So, and she's also been working with Heather on some hiring that's going on at Russell. Samantha comes to us from James John Elementary School and in Portland Public Schools. Previous to that, she was in Salem Kaiser School District for 14 years. 10 of those was at Weddell Elementary School. So she comes to us with a lot of elementary principal experience, and really feel fortunate to have Samantha coming our way. She's going to bring a wealth of experience to our collective team. So we look forward, and she will ideally be here in August when we all get back together.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Any questions about Samantha? Michael, is she an avid knowledgeable?
Yeah, so interesting connection. You met Lisa Collins last month,
Right.
and I knew Lisa from Portland Public Schools, and Lisa actually was one of the references of Samantha's. And James John actually was an elementary school that implemented Avid at James John, I think 4 years ago. So she's had some training. And it's been to Summer Institute, but we'll need some Parkrose training.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Consent calendar. These are items that are basically required, and we've dealt with them in some way or another before tonight. I do have a question, however, and that is the Jimmy Pepper Native American Arts Festival. Oh, we need to do a motion, yes. So hang on until we do a motion. Do I hear a motion to accept or reject the consent calendar as listed?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
A second?
Okay. Before we vote, I do have a question. The Jimmy Pepper Native American Arts Festival, is that zero cost?
No.
Or is it $952?
$52. $952.
Okay,
This is what they wanted to play, zero.
right.
This is what the admin approved.
Okay, that was what that's what I thought, and then I went back and double processed. Thank you, Andrea. And Cherie, one comment before we do. I love the surplus property idea. That is just brilliant. Any more questions, comments?
How far is Western, oh, it's right there.
Western bus sales?
Yeah, is it close by? Is it in Portland?
Western bus sales is actually, as you go up to the mountain,
Oh, yeah, right
it's
now.
right on the right hand side.
Yeah.
Oh,
And we got our last 4 buses today, 1 last week and 3 today. And our vehicle that they're gonna be driving, they haven't arrived today. So now we have 4 vehicles that are used for alternative means.
Great, thank you. Seeing no more questions and or comments, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion passed.
Is Nefer Mackenzie right now?
Yeah, Sonia, are you there?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Is she voting as well?
She
Sorry, I
knows.
was on mute.
Oh, you were on mute, okay. We're in the middle, so you can vote on these things.
Yeah.
Okay, we're now on to non-agenda items, citizen comments. Earl, Mr. Decay doesn't have any comments, so we'll move on to Board of Education, committee reports, Education Foundation, and communication.
On communication, newsletter went out.
Yep.
You all know about it. I haven't heard any feedback from, I liked it, or I haven't heard anything from the public at all. And our July memo should be coming out in July.
In July. Andrea has that spreadsheet done and so they can mock it up the way. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I did send our newsletter out via my email to lots of Old Time Parkrose people. So, and I would suggest that if you guys still have, you might want to do the same thing. And of course, it was on Facebook, which I appreciated you posting, Andrea. Smart move. The Educational Foundation, I have heard nothing, so I'm believing everything is okay. Sonia, Oregon School Board Member of Color Caucus update, anything to share with us?
All that I know is we are intended to meet at the summer conference in Bend.
Okay,
We're supposed to meet as a group, and I think there's gonna be an opportunity for us to have a meeting there. And I know that earlier this week, Ana Del Rocio, who is one of the co-presidents of the caucus, went to a regional OSBA meeting, and is going to be asking for some things I talked about in my last update, which is to allow us to amend their bylaws to allow us to have a vote as part of the OSBA board. So I haven't had the updates yet. I just know that she attended the meeting, and I believe the meeting was either Thursday or Friday of last week. So I'm just kind of waiting for some updates or correspondence regarding that meeting. But all I know is we are meeting at the summer conference and then as a group. So that's all I have for now with updates.
Okay, thank you. Final board goal report, community solutions, update, which was part of the appreciative inquiry. Sarah, would you like to?
Yeah, I believe Andrea's pulling it up. Did we meet earlier this month? June 2nd, maybe?
Yes.
Yes.
We did.
We did.
Yes. Okay, what did I write? Yes. So I've attended and participated in all community solutions group meetings. I believe we've had 4 to 6 meetings. Right, and the University of Portland this year presented on inclusive community engagement, which was one of the pieces of work we had also wanted done in this school year. And we get about half the folks of the group attending one or more meetings, if that makes sense. So it's not the same people every time. Sometimes folks might miss a meeting or two, I'm sure due to life, but we get about half the folks meeting to meeting. So with that, it has been a little tricky. This is totally a start out and building year in thinking about what is the purpose of the group. There's been a couple of ideas that have coalesced. The people from the PTO leadership that have been attending have really enjoyed getting to know the other PTO folks. So I believe they're setting up a PTO leadership group with Michael in order to get together, and that's sort of an offshoot of this community solutions group, is a PTO leadership specific group with Michael that meets a couple times a year, potentially next year. That leaves us with a couple things that I see as the body of the work of the community solutions group going forward, and one of those is around that inclusive community engagement and putting that research into practice as best we can, because we've got a long way to go, making sure that all members of our community feel engaged. As well as events have been brought up a lot at the Community Solutions Group, and making sure that we're hosting events so that I would say there's more of a community feeling, right? People feel engaged and involved and aware of what's going on at the district. Anything else that you would like to share, Mary Lou?
Well, and I apologize because I did not respond to this, but I think there's been an interesting discussion concerning playgrounds.
Oh, that too.
And lengthy discussion, that discussion will continue. Michael's made some proposals that I feel the group was mulling over and willing to work with him on some creative solutions. One of the things that I think we will have a better handle on, and I know that Michael has talked about reaching out to the businesses and the neighborhood associations as well. And when we look at other items, I will bring those up. But I see us expanding the membership. I also see us really at one point tying down what the goal is going to be. The presentation by the U of P, I felt, was excellent. And one of the things they talked about was educational brokers. And using our student body as being part of those brokers. There are also key people in the community who tend to spread the news and share information. So I think there's a great potential of what this could become. And I think it's one of those things that with the transition, and I appreciate the fact that Michael's taken it over, I also think that when we have our retreat in August, we need to have a deep conversation. Is this a board committee, or is it a superintendent's committee, or is it a joint committee? If it's a joint committee, how does that look? So those are things that come to my mind this evening.
Right, and what's the purpose that the committee serves?
A clear,
A more clear purpose that the committee serves. And is it advisory? Is there some decision making? You know, what are the goals there? It's a lot to.
I look forward to listening more about the community solutions group. I think they're very potential, as you mentioned, and I like the idea that you mentioned about including a kid, like a student. In past, and I think maybe a staff member who's maybe interested. But again, it's whatever the need is out there, we have to kind of see how we can make it the most out of these people's time.
well, yeah, and I think that's an important piece, and I think that I have adjusted to seeing agendas and minutes written in the Avid note-taking process, which is, to me, has really been helpful, particularly during the meeting. And Michael has put together some good agendas. I think there's some excitement, but I also think that we have to deal with going back to one of the things we talked about at the beginning of the school year, and that is, how do we build a more inclusive group of people? Because, how do I say this politically correct? We all, the group as of now tends to be Northern European, to use your quote.
With high economic
Not necessarily. But my goal would be, my personal goal would be that it reflects more of our community. So, Sonia, any questions?
No questions. I'm just also interested to see how the community solutions team, how it's changed next year or adjusted, and what the process is. If it's going to be more of an advisory, if we're all going to be able to participate. So, looking forward to that discussion.
Great, excellent. Legislative updates, anybody?
I'll just enter what I did. I mean, I followed the race on 24, and Shania ended up taking 61% of the vote. So I look forward to meeting with Shania down there in southern Parkrose.
Yeah, yes.
/ Northern David Douglas. But I just remember that they came with me, and we had a really good discussion with Shania. So eventually we have some inroads already going on there.
Good.
Okay. And Joanne Harvesty going to for city council. So I know a person of color who has great, she was a state representative at one point, so
Yeah.
she's bringing a lot of wealth of knowledge, and I mean, she lives in that area as well, density
Yeah.
that area, so, and she has strong ties to the neighborhood associations out there, so, I look forward to work with her if that happens to be the case.
Well, and,
But she's running as someone else, so.
I'm trying to think who.
Loretta.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Oh, I thought she thought, it's a runoff?
It's around.
Okay, no comment.
With adding to Eric's with talking with Shamia, she was at least interested in debating maybe thought, bringing it up. So I got somebody that on the legislative, she's not elected yet.
Yeah,
But that
right.
that is possibly going to bring that out into the open and have a discussion about it. Because nobody wants to talk about it, so.
No, and that includes OSBA. I have had a brief conversation with Margaret Doherty about the fact that a $5,000 increase really doesn't do anything. And if our goal is to prepare kids for workforce and college and the world we're moving into, and 300 people a week are moving into the metropolitan area, something's off kilter here. So, no.
I'll just reiterate what I said up there. I really appreciate, and just feedback from Michael, Stacy Michelson's reports. I found those to be really valuable and useful, and kind of prompts me again to send the emails that I've been thinking about sending. So I've run into Barbara Smith Warner a couple times at different things in the last 2 months. Had some face-to-face conversations with her, both about some district issues and then followed up with email, but also about some state highway issues after going to the PBOT meeting that was at Maywood Park campus like 6 weeks ago about the improvements that they have for 102nd Avenue. Followed up with her as well.
Is it about economic development?
No, they're
no,
gonna
okay.
change the
That's-
traffic flow.
That's different.
Calming,
2 lanes,
but yeah.
which is scary. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. The one suggestion I would make, I'll go back to community solutions, is that, because we do, Michael does do minutes, I don't know how it's going. To add them into the board packet, so
That'd be
you
good.
guys see what the agenda is and also what the results were.
That would be a good way to communicate.
And I do have a kind of a list of things that we talked about, and I will, when I send, I actually will be sending a note out to the group this week, and I'll just include the board in on that, which will have the minutes, and then just kind of bulleted things that we talked about moving into the fall.
And then there's a meeting in August.
Yeah, I have a proposed meeting date
Okay.
for August, because I think what we want to do is establish, kind of the common Tuesday or whatever day that is, so that folks know ahead of time when those dates will. So it's tentative, because we have not all talked about, our meeting dates and confirming all that. So
Right.
I'm gonna throw one out there for August, and then I think the August meeting will kind of set the norms for the 18-19 school year.
Perfect. Discuss chair and vice chair of July elections. As you all know, the organizing meeting is a week from today. And that's where we elect a chair and a vice chair. And that is also where we're going to hold off on doing committees until the August retreat, where we can talk about and get a better idea. And other than that, we were able to, Andrea checked it out and has done it. And, when we had to do single votes for the list after list after list, that will all be included in the consent calendar. So when you get it, run through and check anything that you want to talk about before we vote. But who's in charge of this will be in the consent. So that meeting should not go on and on just because we're dealing with a multitude of votes. Concerning the chair and vice chair, I wasn't sure how to handle this, but I will share a couple of things. One is, I know that the chair previously to me talked about the time commitment being chair has. And I kind of scoffed at it, however, it does. And things that come up during the day that the superintendent will contact you about. And there's an email exchange, so you need to be ready to do that. I did have lunch with Karen once a month, and it allowed us to deal with some school stuff. She shared with me some of her concerns, I with her, my concerns, and also to build a better relationship. And since Eric and I have been preaching relationship for 4 years, now going on 5, it was, I thought, a good use of our time. I can only speak of individually. Part of being chair for me was the onus of making sure the meetings were on time, facilitated well, and that everybody was heard and everybody knew that their comments were appreciated. It also, because I had the privilege of signing the graduation forms, but we're also going to deal with something tonight that is exceedingly important, and I will get to sign that. And it's knowing that my signature will be on it, and when it's looked at in 30 years, that's the person people will remember, not who all was on the board. So, as you think about the vote next Monday, think about those pieces to it. And if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer to the best of my ability.
Well, thank you for being chef and 2 years with you. Thank you for all this wonderful meetings we've had. I've been going back and forth, and I have decided that it has been time for me to run. I can no longer postpone it, and so I will make it my try to go for sheriff next week. In a team of unity and solidarity and transition. And I would hope that people will give me a chance. But if that doesn't happen, I'm willing to work with anyone else, whoever gets to be elected.
Thank you. I love that attitude.
Yeah, I think that this item is on the agenda in part because a couple years ago I thought it was weird that we just came into the July meeting and voted for folks without ever having a public discussion. And I am also interested in being chair in the upcoming year. It's been 2 years being vice chair, going to the agenda review meeting, sort of learning the rhythm of the year and what are the issues that we take on and the role of the board as chair and the superintendent. And this last April when I went to NSBA and I was learning from other superintendents and board chairs what are some of these best practices and how we can accomplish things for students. So yes, depending on how people consider and how we vote next Monday, I would be interested in being board chair, and just like Eric says, I would of course love to work with anyone in that capacity.
I will tell you that I have appreciated Sarah as vice chair. She's been able to cover for me when needed and has asked some really good clarifying questions of the superintendent. So it's an important decision you guys are making, and as I've told you, I've seen, and this is really important to me, I have seen situations when one person was chair for like 4 years. I don't think it bodes well. I think the shared responsibility is important for any organization. And I know I've made it very definite, and trust me, I'm not backsliding. It would be a great pleasure to read the board packet and come to a meeting and not know everything that's in the board packet and why. So, Sonia, anything?
Well, I think it's I want to first also thank Mary Lee for her service as board chair. Because it is a very important role. You do represent the board enough to present itself, whether it's responding to the public or the media, and also signing a document that you said before. I feel like it's a position where someone does have to have that time commitment. And if, if someone's demonstrated that time commitment in a role just as a board member, which is a lot of time commitment, someone who's really been consistent with that, and coming to meetings, really active discussion, knowing that they know that the information. So it's a very important consideration. So I look forward to having that discussion next week.
Okay,
Anybody interested in vice chair?
yeah. Vice chair is extremely important, because if the chair dies, or embezzles money. Huh? Oh, I removed that from the discussion.
Wait, I missed that. What did you say?
I said that if the chair breaks their leg and can't appear, that the vice chair has to fulfill the duties.
Yep,
So,
that's true.
Vice chair is also very important. Trust me, I have appreciated having a very thoughtful and processing individual as vice chair.
That's a compliment, I think.
That's a compliment. That is a
Oh,
compliment.
absolutely.
Okay, moving on to district business. Michael Lopes, say how it's your turn.
Is it okay if I use the Apple TV, Andrea? I updated one thing on the document, which I will make sure you guys get.
Sonia, we're going to television now.
Okay.
Oregon State, the rain delayed, and I think they're gonna call it for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just one marked difference from your packet to this current live document, and that is the third grade reading reports. So Sonia, I'll read the numbers out loud, but this will also be, we'll make sure you get this updated document as well.
Okay.
Initially, your document shows on the right side for the increasing third grade reading scores, shows you the preliminary, very preliminary, I'll use the very preliminary SBA results, which show about a third of our kids meeting or exceeding the grade level ELA standard, which has not changed over the past 3 years a great deal. There's not a significant difference. If you look above that chart, one way we're able to look at the data differently is now you can identify through our DIBELS data, which is really just a normed benchmark from where kids are, what's normative. So the greens and the blues are normative, but the blues now is a new color, and those are students who are considered above benchmark. So in the normed test, these are students who are at the 75th percentile and higher. So this now exists because this is a great predictor to ELA success. And remarkably, if you look at these third grade numbers and about 29% of kids above benchmark, it's almost matched to our SBA results in this school year. And they've done quite a bit of research on these norms and how they compare to smarter balanced predictability. You can see from last year at 2017 at this time we had 46% of our third graders at or above benchmark, and this year we're at 56%, so there's definitely an increase, but it is not a percentage that I would greatly brag about. Obviously it's not a good free throw percentage, it's not a good percentage of penalty kicks, and it's definitely not a good percentage for test scores. However, you likely saw in the work session with the schools that we did have some schools who made significant gains this year, where their improvements have been multiple years of work, particularly at Shaver Elementary School, who've had some marked differences at each and every grade level, which we're really proud of and makes a difference in the end for the whole district. The goal now is, those systems and practices are in place, and it's really a matter of getting deeper into what we're doing during core reading instruction time. I've talked about that before. We know that matters. We know that that's where it's making a difference in those schools that are showing those gains. But you can still see we have over a third of our kids who are below benchmark, well below benchmark, matter of fact, which those are students who generally are a couple of years behind their peers. So they're still needing very intensive instruction and support, not only during reading time, but this is also requiring additional support So when you hear me talk about Title I reading specialists, when I talk about educational assistants that are working in the classroom, a lot of that additional support is focused on that most intensive group. And the good thing to report to you is that those systems are insured for those kids that need that intensive support, but it can't be done in isolation. It's like sending a kid to a specialist doctor and not really taking very generally good care of them, if that makes sense. So obviously the goal in the next year is I do think that it's possible for the district to bump 10 points a year and get to a point where we are, when we're at 80%, that's a pretty good indicator, it's a good blood pressure for a school district, because it is not typical for 100% of kids to be at the norm.
Yeah.
However, it's more manageable when you're working with more like 20 to 25% of the kids who need that more intensive support. And that's definitely the target that we're working toward. And truly tangible, much more tangible than it was 3-4 years ago.
Michael?
Yep.
Verbal skills, language, plays into reading. Are we doing anything to enhance the language development? And I know we have speech clinicians now and we're rebuilding,
Okay.
but is there an emphasis on language development?
So we use the term academic language for all, and the best way to kind of put that into practical terms is what do the opportunities for students to respond in the classroom look like? So Dave and I are in class together and we're just sitting and listening to the teacher, and we're not really being asked to respond or asked to talk to one another, and that limits our ability to really talk academically with one another. So what we're working with our teachers and our educational assistants on is what are the strategies that help increase those opportunities to respond, so that if Eric and I are having multiple opportunities during reading time, during math time, we know that there's a heavier likelihood, right, that we're gonna be more engaged, most importantly, and we're going to be soaking in that content and getting more opportunities to practice, because if we're having opportunities to respond, then teachers have opportunities for corrective feedback, which is if we're not on the right track, the teacher's able to intervene and help us get on the right track. So that's everything from multiple strategies around how we partner kids strategically, instead of just saying, hey, pick a partner. You know, we're teaching teachers how to strategically match students, whether it might be a student who is more proficient in English and a student who is not as proficient, and you're matching the two of them together so they get opportunities to respond with each other. But those students who have language, I hate to use the word deficiencies, but I'm going to use that term because I'm lacking another term. But students who do not have proficiency in English need a much larger number of opportunities, right?
Yes.
So that's where you see they get English language learners receive specialized instruction in some cases. Or the English language learner teachers going into the classroom to actually provide that additional adult support, so that the students are having to use those academic language frames to help them talk through the content. But again, there's in many cases a 30 million word gap, right?
Right,
So that
right.
in order to decrease these numbers and bring kids to benchmark, that is one of the most monumental keys to the classroom, is that you're increasing that academic language practice and providing those opportunities to respond. So when you walk into a classroom to visit schools, you should hear kids chorally responding. You should be hearing them being cued to talk to one another, and you probably could figure out really quick if the kids have been strategically matched or if they've just been randomly paired. Because the results of that will differ a great deal, and you'll get a lot more leverage if you're strategically partnering kids over time. Doesn't mean that Sarah and I are partners for the whole year. A teacher who's strategically partnering kids is constantly rotating and giving all kids opportunity to practice. So even if I'm a high language learner, I'm still getting a high demand for language. It's just different language. We're showing more advanced language that student can use in the classroom.
Okay, and to hear you say that we are doing choral,
Yes.
if I was younger, I would click my heels like Dorothy. That's exciting to hear, because I know from experience that really can have an impact.
Michael, so for the ESL students.
Yes.
Now, we have Title I. How often do students who only speak one language get Title I a week? Like 1, 2 times?
So every school, that's a good question. Every school has a period each day that we call intervention. So if you're a student who's advanced, you're going to be doing something that's more of an enrichment activity based on reading. If you're someone in the intensive range, you're actually going to be sitting down with a teacher, educational assistant, or a specialist to receive specific instruction. And again, that instruction is intended to get you to have to respond. Like if I have a kid, 2, 3 kids with me over a 15-minute period, and I'm able to elicit a lot of response, whether it's practicing sounds, sight words, whatever it is, that instruction is going to really matter. So it does, that happens every single day for the kids who need it. So those kids who are in that well below range receive that in some form from an adult each day. We prioritize that. Even on Wednesdays when we release early, we guarantee that time's going to happen. Right. There are some kids that really need a lot of intensive, and they may get an extra dose, right? We call it an extra dose during the week. So they might go see a specialist, because sometimes kids aren't as responsive to the programs we use, so we have to use something that's more specialized, that we only may use for the smaller handful of kids.
Sonia,
Yeah,
any questions?
no questions.
Okay, I don't want you to feel not part of us.
No, I do. It's coming out a little bit, but I'm hearing and taking notes, so
Okay,
I'll let you know if I have a question.
okay.
The next 2 categories, math and graduation rate. The math rate is slightly gone up for 7th graders, which is just kind of our benchmark check. I would say with this being the first year of a new implementation, we should see a gradual increase over time. I heard anecdotally that the 8th graders actually did better, but we don't really have any theories as to why. I think really now that we go into next year with the new math program at elementary, the more common the instruction, the more how we're eliciting those responses from students, then you're going to gradually see these numbers go up. When we meet in the fall, you'll be able to see how these numbers compare to other students in the state of Oregon. So you can say, well, how is this relative to other areas or other schools like us or other schools in our state? But this is, again, very preliminary. Grad rate, so I think we shook 199 hands on June 14th.
Yeah.
And that is about almost 84% of the senior class. And again, this is very early data, so there's no guarantee to the number other than it's a good starting number. We know that we have some kids who are recovering credits this summer, and those kids will ultimately be part of that formula as we get a grad rate to you at the end of 2018.
Okay, help me out here. We know that, what was it, 199 kids out of a class of 238 walked across the stage. So they have either a certificate or a diploma. There are 39 kids who were part of that class who have not walked across the stage yet, but they have opportunities this summer.
Yes, and I wouldn't say, and Christine, you can interrupt if need be. I wouldn't say all 39 of those kids are close enough.
Okay,
I would say that there is a handful of those kids, I would be guessing anywhere between half and 20 of them that could make up those credits over the summer. It just depends on what they take and what they access to. And I think one of the things the high school's done a much better job of 2 things. One is allowing kids to recover credit during the school year, so you're not just waiting for summer school or night school. You're actually able to recover credits during the year, which is another thing that helps us in terms of keeping kids on track early on, because that's where kids lose track really fast, is when they're freshmen and they just don't have that opportunity to catch up. So we'll have some kids enrolled in classes this summer, and we'll definitely see an increase.
and then those kids that don't get enough credits could possibly be 5th-year seniors.
Yes.
So I mean, it should be 100% in a perfect world.
Yes.
I don't live in a perfect world. The fact that we have 84% of our kids graduating.
I think the best compliment is obviously it's still to think about that the 40 kids, frankly bothers me.
Right.
Because I know that it's a rough road if they don't get their diploma. And they're kind of set back a little bit, right? So how are they gonna get a step forward because they no longer have the support system, right? To get them out into the workforce, whether it's, an employer who's actively giving employment opportunities through the school district or whatever that might be. So I think that the real promise here is I do think that the systems of keeping kids on track have improved. I do know of times when graduation comes up and we're just getting kids through in ways that aren't really as genuine as I would like them to be, and I'm happy that we're improving how we do that, that there's integrity, more integrity to graduating at Parkrose High School. Not to say that there was this great lack of it, but I just think the systems have tightened up and they're better and they have more rigor to them. Because ultimately, we're not really doing kids any favors by giving them a diploma and they're not really ready for what they're gonna face the next day after graduation, or at least weeks later, so that makes a big difference.
Sarah?
If you could help me understand, Michael, I want to be very excited, but then the part of me is remembering these cohort rates include kids that started with us as ninth graders, but may no longer be with us, and that's in part, where am I getting that from?
You're on the right track. I'm gonna go to our
So this
expert.
is the best approximation we have of what's called the NCES rate, which is the students, 12th graders with us on May 1, who actually walked.
Sure.
This is a relatively meaningless number,
Right.
because this is actually not what gets published, it's not what counts for state
Okay,
accountability or
that's what I
federal
was thinking
accountability.
of.
But because I don't know who our cohort is until late October of next year.
Right.
I don't actually know.
Because our cohort is kids that started with us at ninth grade and then went to any other place.
That's right.
And whether or not they finished, whether or
Or-
not they were with us.
If we were the last diploma granting institution of record. So out of that 238,
Yeah,
some of those dropped out. Some of those disappeared and we don't know where they are.
Right.
or it would be a larger number and they disappeared a year or two ago. Okay.
Right. So this is the best I can give you today.
But it'll wiggle.
And it'll
Yeah.
wiggle and it'll go down.
Right.
It is, however, still on the uptrend.
Right.
The NCES is higher than our usual NCES, which makes me think that our cohort will reasonably be on the upswing.
Great. I was sort of waiting for that other shoe because
Yeah.
I wanted to be very
Yeah.
excited, but knew it was more complicated
I have
than
a
that.
question about that, you may have already answered it though.
Yes?
So some of those 238 that did not graduate, is it possible that some of those may have either gone, like maybe transferred to an online school, or they've moved and we're just not, we don't have that bet on them, is that what you're saying?
That's definitely part of it.
Okay.
So,
This is the part they don't report, when they talk about Oregon having, poor graduation rates, because it varies from state to state.
Oh, how they're
how they're
calculated.
counted. So this is, your 84%, Christine, is basically the number that were at the high school on graduation day. No,
May 1.
May 1, okay. So this is who was there May 1, and of the kids who were there on May 1, we graduated 84%.
Yeah.
The state doesn't care, but we care. And we can use that when we're talking to people.
If we're
It's an
clear about it
indicator.
and don't.
It's an indicator. Yeah.
It's just that slippery slope, like Christine's saying, of how those different numbers come together.
In August or when we have the stats, I'd like to have an idea where we're at with the honors diplomas.
Sure.
So 16, 17, and 18, so are we increasing the number, or are we stagnant, or?
Sure, we can find that out.
Were you amazed at how many kids have different forward songs? We need on the program, there needs to be
There is.
There is?
Yeah,
Oh, tells you how I
There's
pay
a key.
attention.
I was reading it, yeah. The next piece is on track from 9th grade to 10th grade, another important indicator we pay attention to. And again, this is not official, but we have 87%, just a little over 87% of our 9th graders ending with 6 or more credits, which is
Great.
Great.
is being on track. And again, I think that part of this is due to those freshman-specific supports, and even more that will follow next year. And some of this is thanks to some of the Measure 98 dollars that allowed us to increase some staffing and support at the high school that helped specifically with kids who slipped early and needed a lot of adult support to maintain being on track. If you can keep this number there throughout, then that makes a really big difference. I think this is a key thing, and then obviously looking at attendance from 9th grade on is really important as well. Dual credits, we just don't have that data yet, but we will. As grades get recorded and registered, I think you'll be pleased that we have continued to increase the number of dual credits that are offered. Christine's included for us enrollment forecasting for our CS courses this past year, which was just the one, and then going into next year, what's forecasted for the first semester. And note that AP Computing Principles and Exploring Computer Science are both new courses that we'll be offering in the fall. 2 of our science teachers are actually going to be teaching what we call ECS, or Exploring Computer Science, in the fall, and they're going to a training event this summer to learn the curriculum and how to integrate it with their content, which I'm excited about.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, I was excited to see.
Yes.
Yeah, we're really excited about it as well. Thank you to Portland State, who's provided us with the training support and the curriculum. This is a grant through the National Science Foundation that's actually allowed us to do this so quickly, because small districts like us don't have the infrastructure to get it up and running as quickly as you'd like. So these folks have been great to work with. Definitely thank Karen, because she had the relationship with PSU that got our foot in the door, so that made a big difference. And then just noted, just below that table is our student success plan. So we had to submit, and this is something that I definitely want to present in more detail to you in the fall, is the student success plan, which is the plan that's directly connected to the Measure 98 funding. So what are we doing with those dollars, and how are they addressing those 3 categories of chronic absenteeism, CTE, college and career readiness. And so the good thing about it being conditionally approved means that we will get the dollars, and we'll be able to manage a new budget coming into this new school year. And these types of numbers are the numbers we will want to use and emphasize with the legislature to say, hey, this measure's been worth it, and we need to continue to fund it, because that is definitely something that's on our nervous minds is, will this be part of the funding formula when they plan for this mandate, something that the voters put in. And we've seen some great initial success.
On the Warner Pacific, I remember in the equity team,
Yeah.
to get people to pay.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about, so teacher pathways, we have the STEM CTE, which we talked about. I think that table above kind of shows you our new kind of CTE focus around computer science. The problematic issue with Warner Pacific is actually slightly tied to this gateway project we've been talking about. It's about access. So Warner Pacific has a teacher pathway program that I believe has promise to it, because Warner Pacific's done some great things about particularly diversifying the teaching workforce. So they have the most representative student body in the Portland area in terms of their student body similar to ours. So the problem is access, and that is the kids have to go to class twice a week at Warner. So they've got to get themselves there, or we need to get them there. So we tried to work out kind of formulas to get them there, because ideally they'd start the pathway when they were a junior, and then they would do student practicum experiences at our elementaries through those 2 years, and then have a ticket in the door to Warner, and a reduction of tuition if you fulfill all of that, and then a commitment to coming back to Parkrose to teach. All those are the great parts. The tough part is just getting the access there, because kids miss class if they go to Warner in the mornings and afternoons. David Douglas School District currently has this pathway. They have like 10 to 15 kids per year. They built the schedule on David Douglas High School's schedule, which doesn't match our schedule. So in the end, it's a semantics thing. It's not impossible to fix. But what we essentially would have to do in order to make it work for our kids is they'd have to miss 2 classes rather than 1. And kids don't want to take that. Most of them can't take that risk.
Yeah.
And so we haven't given up, and we're still meeting with them. Their program director changed, and we're still trying to work on it. I mentioned the Gateway Project because if it's up here, right near Winco and Fred Meyer, that's a lot easier to get our kids there and get them back to attend class at Parkrose. Eastern Oregon University has a program where we can designate a teacher on our campus to teach the course. There is some promise to that. The kids only have to go to LeGrand twice a year. It's kind of a big field trip to visit the university. So we're in conversation with them about that potentially being a program. And again, it's a funding issue because you need to release a teacher from one class to teach this. But not impossible. I mean, it's tangible. That PCC piece is part of a grant that's being worked on. It is not up and running in at least 2 years, but we've got our district at the table having the conversations, which is a Pacific University program. I'm really looking forward to our conversation in August because I have some great ideas about possible ways to measure culture, get a pulse on it. I think some of the lessons we learned from the University of Portland helped. And so I think that's just going to be. I just want to make sure that we come back to this goal and talk more about what are the indicators we want to use in the future when it comes to measuring school culture. In terms of RJ, we did have professional development. We met the other day and planned some further development. We're really going to focus a lot of support to classified staff this coming year. We had 65 bullying referrals this year, 76 last year. Relatively similar. I think the really important question to ask is, how are we writing referrals? What are the indicators that follow up? How consistent are we, good and bad, in terms of the number of referrals that are being written? So much of that has to do with us as adults and how we're communicating and our expectations, and what is bullying to one compared to another needs to be calibrated, and we have to have a better understanding of what that looks like. Diverse staff, well, we've been hiring a lot, and we're still, I think, a handful more that we're hiring. I think we'll have a better idea as we get into the next school year as to what that looks like. Here's a winter to spring comparison for discipline disparities. And you can see that our discipline disparities still exists, particularly for our Black students. It is one-to-one in all the other areas. So it's particularly pervasive with our Black and African American students. And it's gone down slightly, but when it's still at 2-to-1, that means that you can look at your referrals and definitely see that it's overrepresented by our Black and African American students.
Michael, just from the top of your mind, like, is there a particular, like, when I write referrals, they usually, this is the reason. Is there a particular one that identifies with this particular population at this point, or is it all over the place?
I think that you would find that there are, if I understand what you're asking, I think that one that is at more of an increase with Black students is disrespectful, defiant behavior. And that usually comes down to how they're engaging with adults, but more importantly, how adults are engaging. And one of the components of professional development we're planning for next year, it has a beautiful title and I'm gonna mess it up, but it's basically how to avoid the one-up relationship, where as an adult who is kind of the person in control at school, how much power that elicits, and so how not to trigger a situation that doesn't need to be triggered. So really kind of giving us more prescriptive ways to kind of step back. And I think part of that's paying just as much attention to kind of the emotional health of our own employees, so that they know when they can tap out if they need to, because they know that they're in a place that they're not going to make a good decision and create a power struggle with a student. And when you're 14 and 15, a power struggle's not a bad thing to try out, right?
Yeah.
They're not afraid of it.
You look tall, you look good in front of your
Yes.
peers.
So I think more common language from us and techniques on our part to help avoid that engagement, particularly with the disengaged student. And if I'm a kid and I'm in 8th or 9th grade, and particularly if I'm an African American boy or girl who's had a lot of referrals, their investment in the system has been minimalized because they know they're going to get in trouble more than their peers. I mean, they're very savvy and can figure that out. So a lot of it really. Yeah, go ahead, Sonia.
Yeah, I have a question. So noting here that we have, is it 52 new hires for the school year, is that right? It's a total of 52 new
Yes.
staff
Yes.
for the school year? So what I wanted to do is ask a little bit about restorative justice, and perhaps you can speak to maybe your conversations or talking about our work we do as a district
Yes.
during those interviews with those staff, those new staff people,
Yes.
new teachers, because they're coming from different districts where maybe restorative justice looks different or sounds different, or they've had some other type of experiences with that. So what are those conversations like when you're doing the interviews, and what are you looking for in their experience as educators or administrators in their role in terms of restorative justice?
That's a great question. And so one thing, a couple of things we do is, one is I've introduced something called a behavior event interview, which are more scenario based, and the purpose of this type of interview question is to get to the root of key characteristics, and they're more personal characteristics than they are content knowledge. So for example, we always ask an equity question, depending on the level, right? Whether it's classified, teacher, or principal. And we've had a lot of this with me recently working with schools on hiring principals. We definitely embed a lot of that into our questions so that, one, they know that it's important, and two, we're able to sort out what their background knowledge is, but also what are their personal beliefs, because that's going to be a really important part to this work, because as you know, if that belief, that core belief isn't there, that believing that all kids can achieve, that all kids can be successful at school, if they lack that fundamental understanding, then the trainings are that much harder, right? I feel like we can train people, but to build that belief, it does take a lot of time and a lot of work. So one, obviously we are looking specifically to diversify the workforce because we want our students to see people who look like them, but just as important, people who have the deep values that we have around ensuring that there's a level playing field and that there are opportunities for all students, and no students are underrepresented in our district, which is obviously still evident that we're not there. But we are much more intentional from the human resource level about what people believe compared to what they know.
Great, thanks.
Amen to that, Michael.
Equity lens, we definitely have some conversations to come, and know that we are going to be showing the movie The Classified in August. We also have planned a district-wide event on statewide in-service day that all of you will be invited to. That one-up relationship piece, Michelle Markle's garnered some support from a national organization that's going to come work with our classified staff. We will invite certified and administrators to be there. Part of it's part of our furlough agreement, but even more important, it's just an important skill we want to offer to our classified staff coming in this school year. And then we'll actually have a special speaker come in February to talk really around this topic, specifically to students with disabilities, students who are underrepresented in our schools. This is the 90 of 90 attendance data. So these are the percentage of students who attended school 90% or more of the time during the 17-18 school year.
I couldn't help but notice that Russell, 84%. What's going on out there?
So we asked the same question, and many of their strategies are the same that other schools are doing. For instance, Shaver has specific supports that the other schools don't have, which is just more monitoring, more data. We don't have any specific actions that the school is taking that then says, oh, well, they're doing this so much better, right? It doesn't, in quantity, really seem to be noted. However, they have throughout the year, and they have generally trended a little bit higher than the other schools, even when we didn't have interventions in place. So we will be part of a chronic absentee grant this coming year, which will provide about an additional $90,000 to our district, which will be a combination of professional development to staff, as well as potentially some personnel to help us with the data collection to determine, who are the kids. Obviously, one thing that we know for sure is that there is those kids at Parkrose High School. They're the kids at elementary. They keep that trend. That trend rarely breaks, particularly as kids get older. So if you have poor attendance in elementary, you are highly likely to have poor attendance in middle school and high school. And that, so we met with ODE. We did talk about some of the public health issues that we note. One of the things that I think is just working on a communication plan. So part of this grant, there's the possibility that we will also be provided access to something called Remind, which is a universal texting system, which you can still use, but this comes with a subscription which allows you to translate into 40 different languages. I think simply sometimes when some of our families, when they're younger, they don't understand or know of the resources we have. Like we have one of the most, one of the best county health centers, school-based health centers, but yet I don't think people know it's there. And particularly when kids are new into the district, they may not know. So we can do a much better job of communicating regularly of, hey, it's flu season, here's a place you can access and get this support. Because I think a lot of families, when their babies are sick, they don't want to send them to school, but they don't necessarily have access to appropriate care to get them well and help them get better. Particularly now that things are more chronic, like asthma. A lot more kids are born early, so they just have health issues early on, and that's something we want to be able to address and help families navigate.
Just a shout out for Remind. My kiddo's teacher's done that the last 2 years, and it's excellent.
Great.
Michael, do we have any expectation that some of it is older kids having to stay home and take care of younger kids?
I think it's a small representation of it. I do believe that is a factor. We have some families culturally who don't start their kid, they don't want to start their kid at 5 years old, right? And I remember being at Prescott and having families come and register their child to start kindergarten when they were 7, right? And then you have this conversation about, well, is it appropriate to start this kid at 7? But that's not generally the norm. I think transportation is a factor. I think transportation is a big factor. I think there are some public health issues that we don't necessarily have the resources at the school level to handle, other than we have support in the district that some districts don't have. But when we only have one school nurse, school health assistants, that regular, building a system to regularly check up on kids, and not create a shaming system either, because shaming doesn't work. It doesn't cause kids to go to school. A lot of school districts will go the route of, that kind of truancy officer, and that ultimately helps a small number, but it doesn't change the numbers that you're looking at up here.
And how many, having changed the start time for the high school, has that improved attendance?
Well, if you're looking at this number, your answer would be no.
Right.
You probably have seen in the news that lots of high schools are talking about this now.
Right.
We know long-term, this is good for our kids.
Right.
I think that if you you'd have to talk to the high school teachers literally and say, what's first period like now compared to when you taught first period before? Because ultimately, you do want to see it come out in this number, but I think that there are still pervasive issues that are barriers that,
Keep it from coming out.
keep them from coming, if kids aren't engaged in school and they don't feel like they belong, or they don't feel like they can access or can achieve, then, I'm 15, why go, right? I thought I was gonna be a professional basketball player when I was 15, so I didn't necessarily see the reason other than my mom kicking me out the door in the morning to go to school. And if my mom wasn't there, those were the days I generally sometimes didn't go, and my mom would come home from her second job, and I'd get in trouble, and that whole cycle started. But I think that's part of the dilemma, is how do you get the kid out the door and keep them at school and keep them engaged? Sure, parents would say you need to go to school, but,
When I look at the high school numbers, I always keep thinking about the going, off campus. And I know that other high schools don't have it, and I'm not sure if there's like a story of, open campus versus non-open campus, and maybe we could consider sunsetting the open campus policy.
For lunchtime you're talking?
Yes,
Yeah.
so, to be a 16, 17-year-old, and then I kind of like the freedom of a college student in a way, and probably there's been wars before me who have brought up the issue. But I certainly, it's kind of like, I grew up in a non-open campus policy sort of thing, and we all had to stay there together. But I knew that a lot of my friends, if they had their choice of going down to working, they would, it's only, we don't have this class, but that would be something that I would be willing to talk if the government would be interested in.
Yeah, I think in the fall it would be important to share specifically some of the strategies that are being used, so you can hear what is in common across the district, and then hear specifically what are some of the actions we want to take with the grant. If you look to the next data set in that table, looking at exclusionary discipline, and this is not when kids are just simply expelled. This is when a kid receives in-school suspension, and this is 612. Recognize that in 17-18, they did, if you want to call it a crackdown, they were more serious about students who were not going to class. Because it is fairly easy to go to first period, second period, and you don't like your third period teacher, and find a place to go, right?
Mhm.
I've found kids in the stairwell, they find places to go. So there is more of a system in place to help hold kids accountable, because our kids in general want to be like on campus. Maybe not in a classroom,
Yes,
but on
yes.
campus, because
Yes.
campus is a place, it's a home, it's a community. They do have people they connect with, but yet they're not connected to the academics.
Yes.
So it's about how to get them in the classroom and for them to have the intrinsic motivation to be there as well. So I'd like for you guys to hear directly from the high school, so you could hear specifically, well, what is this 100 for non-compliance? Like, how many chances do they get? What does it look like when they do actually get that talking to? Who do you talk to? Do you talk to the family? What do you offer in support to the student? Do you connect back with the teachers? Because a lot of times with kids, we have kids who go to the same class every day and have 100% attendance, but they don't go to sixth period, right? And so at high school, that impacts that 90% of 90, because that kid gets marked absent for that class, even though they might be going to math every single day. And like, I love my math teacher, but I don't like social studies. And that's what we have to pin down.
Well, and, I am, the truancy exclusionary, that really concerns me, the number.
Well,
And-
that's the core issue for high school attendance.
I know.
That's not going to class.
And I was much like you, mother, we determined if we were sick. So you can stick, we had to stay home, we had to stay in bed, no phone, no TV. That was great, because I read. And I didn't go to school.
But we have video games now, and we have Fortnite.
No, I mean, I just read novels. So, and, you know, I read lots of history. So it concerns me when I see those numbers.
Yes, me too. I think it'd be great for you to hear, just another deep dive in what they're doing and whether that's making an impact.
No, I would love to hear a deep dive in September or October.
You guys talked about this, I don't know if you wanna, you talked about legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think we'll dig into this when we get together as a group as well. And talk more specifically about goals. What goals do you feel like are informing you around the district's progress? I definitely want to make sure that our goals are aligned with the actual work that we're doing, or a goal to initiate some work we want to do, if that makes sense. So that we're really looking at actions, and I can speak to actions that we're taking, and ideally have more specific answers to you, like, oh, here's what Russell did, and this is why they're
Yeah.
15 points above the high school. Because there are some. One good thing is it's a compliment to the teachers, it's a compliment to the school, because kids want to be there and they find a way to get there, right?
Yeah.
It is easier to get kids to school when they're in elementary school because they're
Yes.
a little more prone to be reliant upon the parent. I definitely know that changes so much when we get to adolescence.
And Michael, when we are looking towards August, can we focus on maybe not having as many goals, but having very focused goals?
Yeah, I'm a believer in a deeper goal that then also you can see, what we're actually, specifically doing to address the goal. And that also includes multiple indicators, right? DIBELS is one auditory-based reading test. It doesn't tell you the whole story, but it's kind of a blood pressure. It's a good number to look at, but we shouldn't look at it in isolation. So I'd like to look at, well, what are the other indicators we can use for whatever goals we determine? Thinking about superintendent goals for next year, I definitely think improving communications should remain, but I think the methods and the modes will be different, and the indicators should be different, because we'll be able to measure, hey, what was effective, what wasn't, and I've got some great ideas about what my style is, what's important to me, not only just for my own sake, but also for the sake of the board and the community, to have a better understanding of what we're doing and what's available to our kids in the community. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, because I've got some ideas I want to run past you.
Awesome.
And we're going to talk about PERS in a little bit here. Sheree will give us an update. And just finishing up evaluations for the year, Karen and I had some really good conversations with our principals at the end of the year. We had an opportunity to talk deeply about the data that you had a chance to look at, but also look at a kind of 6 standard evaluation component that we use with our administrators that looks at everything from visionary leadership to communication to operations, all the components of being an effective principal. And I think we covered the goods and the needs to improve. And it's been great being able to do it with Karen, because we're 2 different people, but just to have two views, 2 people who've been observing you has been really beneficial. And we've really leaned more on our district leadership team too, because obviously Sheree and Mary and Christine and Michelle all work with them in pretty intense capacities, so they've always provided some good feedback too on how we could better support our principals. All right, I think that's it.
There's the last one on staffing by age band and staffing by RE.
Teresa in the city.
Oh, thank you. And staffing by gender.
Switch back. I think that was related
It's a separate
to the
page.
higher.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
This?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to it later.
Did you have a question? Oh, you just wanted me to talk, this specifically has to do with our staffing and kind of along the lines of what we are doing to diversify the workforce and just how our staffing looks gender-wise, and then race and ethnicity. And obviously, still work to do, age bands, very interesting
Yeah.
Right?
combination.
However, that part excited me because you want a mixture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the youth brings excitement, the green brings experience. I thought it was super that we are that evenly divided. So I would like to commend, but gender and race and ethnicity.
Yeah.
That's, it's a place for equity.
Yeah.
All right.
Ah.
Thanks for your time on that lengthy report. Graduation ceremony, in general, I mean, I just think we have a lovely graduation. It just feels very community oriented. I like it being in the high school gym. It makes it feel like a high school graduation for someone who's been to many at Memorial Coliseum at U of P. It felt good. The only thing I think we want to talk about next year, just in this is totally my opinion, is like the handshakes. And the big long
Yes.
line of handshakes. How does that work for you? I know how it works for the kids.
Oh,
But
yes.
Sonia, loved your speech. It was awesome. But just, I mean, it's just full of pride and joy to have the band play and the choir sing.
Yeah.
It's just, in my opinion, a great ceremony. Greatly appreciated all
I
of
would-
them.
Before we go on, Dave, comment on the ceremony?
Comment on the graduation?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the best perks of being on the school board. It's just all that energy. I actually enjoy shaking hands. It's just,
It is cool.
yeah,
It is
it's
cool.
like,
Oh,
yeah.
the bruises are beginning to go away. So, I mean, Sarah?
Yeah, great speech, Sonia. Thank you so much. And I agree on the handshakes, right? I think I heard about 5 or 6 kids say like, whoa, that's a lot of hands to shake.
Yeah.
And then a couple of them were like, who are all those people? So that's
Eric?
a lot. I'm open to considering other options.
Yeah, same as I love Sonia's speech. I think she was very on target. And, you know, I hear some kids saying the same thing. You know, it's all hands to shake. But, you know, it's part of a ceremony. It's a ceremony. It's a ceremony. And I really like having an opportunity for the music and the orchestra to kick on the sides. And this is like a beat, kind of saying bye to the friends. I was on the farthest right for them.
Yes.
And I could hear the kids on the instrument so excited, getting for the and I could go, ooh.
No.
So yeah, I love the ceremony. I mean, I wouldn't change anything about it unless, you know, there's something that Mr. Lawson like to think about it.
Yeah.
Hey, Sonia, your turn.
So it was a tremendously, it was a great experience, giving a speech. It's just so exciting to be a part of their day, their achievement, and sharing that with their families. It's a tremendous honor to be able to do that. So I was just happy to be there, be a part of it. It was a great ceremony.
I,
And I do have some suggestions on how we can do something with the handshake. But yeah, let's we can talk about that next year.
Thanks.
I concur with everybody in the handshakes. Your speech was awesome. It brought tears to my eyes.
Thank you.
And sometimes I think we can overload the dais with bodies and the focus is on the kids. And Nicole does the ceremony. I was impressed how the four valedictorians presented together. The salutatorians, I thought the kids were just absolutely everything you dreamed of wanting them to be. And I would hope that the kids get more input into the ceremony, and it's not necessarily adult needs that get taken care of.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion.
They talked to me about that when I became superintendent. So that could be part of our conversation. Next piece, August retreat. The dates are up there. I think, we'll have a robust agenda, lots of great things to talk about. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be, it's going to produce some great goals, but also some great agreements among the board and myself in terms of of how we want to work moving forward. Furlough day bargaining. So between the last time we met, we did bargain with OEA and OSEA over the furlough days, because that is part of our collective bargaining agreement with each group whenever we change the work calendar. With OEA, they came in with some interesting proposals, and we ended up compromising on providing we have district-directed professional development time, and we have teacher-directed time, and we alternate those Wednesdays. So Dave, you're probably familiar from those conversations when we were bargaining. What we agreed to do was to give the December district-directed day back to the teachers. Normally in December, we only do 135 minutes of professional development. June is kind of eliminated because our last day is June 6th of school. So it's going to be pretty close. So our compromise was providing a little bit of their time back to them, because obviously we can't really do it with compensation. With OSEA, we went a slightly different angle in that because they are going to be missing 5 days of work, we are actually going to use some of our grant money, some of that chronic absenteeism grant, to provide additional training, and these will be additional hours we'll actually be able to provide to OSEA staff when they are not normally scheduled to work. So when we put out their work calendar, these will be required hours, and they're essentially hours that we can add back to their time that they'd be losing. Of course, we wouldn't be able to do that with general fund money, so we're actually able to use this grant money, which is specifically designed for training of teachers and educational assistants. So we have a total of about 9 hours of additional professional development that will happen on statewide in-service day, October 14th, and we will also be inviting them back to come to the bigger presentation in February. So this will be the first time on kind of back to school for Teachers Day, where all classified staff are invited to be back for the training on that day as well. So when we have our first day back, everybody will be back, including our bus drivers and nutrition services folks, which will be great. It'll be a great way to kick things off. First in a long time.
Well, great strategy. Thank you for doing that, Michael, at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They both, I think that our relationship with OEA and OSEA has just been greatly appreciated. I know that in other districts it's been really challenging, so we're really fortunate. All right, ready, Christine?
I am just gonna give you kind of a look, you know, we're undergoing an elementary math adoption this year, we did secondary math adoption this last year, and it's a mediumly big deal. So I wanna keep you guys up to date on where we are and how we're intending or trying to implement this in the way that will be most successful. So, we just wanted to kind of give you a look at where we are. A reminder, it's called READY. It has two names, READY, iReady. iReady is the assessment component of it. So the elementary program is really called READY. Our first training that we had was on May 9th. We had it at Sacramento, and all of the elementary teachers were present. We broke them up into kind of grade bands, K1s, 2, 3s, 4, 5, so that we had sort of manageable sized groups. It was, for many of them, their first look at the curriculum. We've had a math team that we've worked with all year. Obviously, they had seen the curriculum before that point, but for a lot of them, it was their first real look at it. Very, very enthusiastic, very supportive. They got lots of trainer support. We must have had 15 trainers here.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little surprising. And we handed out all their materials so that they had those going into the summer. They had a month kind of to play with it, look around with it, play with it with kids if they wanted to. And we have had some teachers who were already implementing in the classroom, some of our pilot folks. So that we thought was very successful. This summer we'll identify, we're kind of finalizing that right now, I think, some building staff that we want to create into sort of a math leadership team. Our intention is that we'll get as many of them together as possible to meet once during the summer to really talk through how to best support their building and their grade level staffs. And then I will be doing the work to get all of the accounts created and the kids rostered and all that stuff, because it is a digital curriculum, so we need to have accounts for all the students. And then we have the Chromebooks in my offices, and we're trying to figure out the most prudent way to get those delivered out to the buildings, because in August, on August 29th, we have our second professional development. We have kind of our big lead-in. And that'll have, again, all of the elementary teachers together at the middle school, I think. And we'll break them up by level, and we'll talk really specifically through what does this look like day to day, how do you do your groupings, how do you start out. And my kind of intention is that's a good time to get them to deliver their Chromebooks that they'll take back to their rooms. We're providing every elementary classroom with 5 Chromebooks and 15 headsets. And they already have iPads in place, and we'll be supplementing the number of iPads so that each teacher has the resources he or she needs to have the program be very successful with the students.
Which brings me to a question. This program works on both the Chrome and the iPads.
Yes, no, and sideways. So iReady itself works on Chromebooks. It does not work, it would work on newer iPads. It doesn't work on the iPads I have.
Okay.
But the supplementary practice program works on our iPads.
Okay.
So this program is based a lot on kind of small groups.
Mhm.
So you'd have 5 of your kids on the Chromebooks doing their weekly assessment.
Mhm.
You'd have 5 of your kids over here working on their iPads on their sort of fluency.
Mhm.
And then you'd have 5 kids over here working with you, on whatever skill we're
Right.
working on. And that's after you've had your large group instruction. And so it's going to work. We have gone backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and we're going to be fine.
Okay.
Although we did have to get headsets because a lot of it is very interactive and auditory, which is awesome. And then during this coming year, we have 2 more Curriculum Associates Professional Development Days in December, and then we'll have the second one in April or May. The December professional development is really how to deep dive into the data. They'll have gotten assessments on all their kids, and that'll give them the strategic, okay, here's what I found out about you and what you need, and here's what I found out about you and what you need. And those might not be the same things.
Right.
That's why we chose this curriculum, is the incredibly rich assessment component that's attached to it. And then our math leadership team will meet regularly, again, to provide in-building support, but also to create district-wide professional development that will allow them to be experts kind of at their grade level. We've got this weird jigsaw Jenga thing going on where we're trying to get representation from each building, but also representation from each level, all spread out. It's working out mostly. And so that's how we'll create math leadership in the district of the schools. So that is kind of where we are with our math rollout so far for this year.
Will this new math program and the information that we're able to gather through the assessment be reflected on the report card,
The state report card or the children's report
or
card?
children's report card?
Not, so the children's report cards are standards-based, and the math program, of course, is standards-based. So I can see there where there would be logical alignments between the two. And we've been working for 2 years now on a system that sort of shoots assessments straight into the elementary report card. But we need to live through this year with it and see kind of what makes sense to us and to teachers about what then is the logical thing to have reflected in the report cards. So we wouldn't do that level of work probably until next summer, spring, summer.
We're still under synergy
Yes,
for, okay.
yes.
You'll have more of an idea of the general health like we do with reading. So you have better snapshots about what our trends are in terms of performance and the strands of mathematics where they're strong or even in general work.
Michael, could you, or maybe I'm just the only one, could we have a presentation on our report cards, K-12, sometime next year?
Yeah, they're yeah, of course. we've made some
I
slight
have a
adjustments.
question about the
Yeah.
curriculum.
Go ahead, Sonia.
Yeah, so I have a question about opportunities for enrichment, maybe for kids who are, who want to move forward and do, or are able to go through the curriculum really quickly, or they're tag students. And also I have a question about homework. How is that, is it worksheets or, because it is online, right? The curriculum?
So
Or
it's
sent through the Chromebook?
It's a little of both.
Okay.
For every student, we get actually 2 workbooks. And I think there will be some variance by teacher as to whether or not they will actually give a child a workbook, because we also have access to the online digital masters. So they could assign the work for older kids, for like 4 or 5s. They could easily assign the work through Google Classroom, and so the kids could do it digitally. Or, a smart teacher's gonna do both and be able to
Yeah.
meet whatever learning style is appropriate.
Right.
So homework is not dependent on a device. It will be able to work either way. And then your
Okay.
first question, which was about enrichment activities, one of the advantages to this kind of curriculum is because you don't have to be lockstep. When you make those groupings in your classroom, you have the opportunity to group based on need. And sometimes that need is an efficiency, but sometimes that need is an interest or a place that a certain clump of students might want to move forward. And these units, again, a lot because it's got so much of a digital component, have much more depth to them than we're used to. So you could go much deeper in a place that you were really interested in. You could do more playing around if you were really digging long division. Because of the digital enrichment components, they can work as remediation, but they can also work as enrichment. It's very important that you know I'm making really good hand gestures while I'm telling you.
Yes.
The kids, Sonia, the kids can also advance, so teachers will have access to all grade levels. So if I'm teaching first grade, I have access to second, third, fourth, and fifth, and even kindergarten. So as Christine's saying, you can advance. So in the assessment system, if I'm assessing to mastery, then the system naturally moves the kid to the next step of that standard so the student can practice. The challenge there, though, is you still need to teach that kid the new standard. You can't just, we don't want to just say like, oh, we're going to just release you to the computer program, because all the program's going to do is allow the kid to practice. And granted, prodigy-like mathematicians will do great with that. But for the most part, if you're just a high achiever and really, really like math, the teacher's still going to have to differentiate to make sure that they're providing instruction so the student can practice the higher grade level work.
Got it, okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Christine.
Yep.
It's
Ms. Cherie?
All the fun stuff I have.
Yeah.
Which one do you got? Student body? Student body audits.
I appreciate the fact that you enjoy this.
I do.
It was tough reading today.
It's been a tough week, but yeah. Right now, the student body audits, as you can see from here, we only have one school that went down, and we knew that Prescott was using some of their funds on their 70th anniversary and doing some other things, and so we knew their money. This report took us through March, basically, so the rest of the audit, because of when we did it in April, will be done when right before the auditors arrive back. So you'll get that report. So it's kind of funky how I can't get all the data when you want it, but the audits are getting better. We still have one school we're working on, and I hope to meet with the principal soon. The biggest fault that we have right now is ensuring that deposits that are made on a timely basis and the receipts that we have that people should be taking are actually done on a daily basis, instead of stockpiling them and then making them all on the same day, which I know money does not all come in at the same day, so it's pretty much of a clue to tell me that it's probably not right. So we're gonna work on that.
How much is it that secretaries have a hard time in the elementary getting away from their desks to get to the bank?
They only have to do it once a week.
It's still a problem.
It's still a
It's
tough
still a
one.
There's
problem.
only one of them.
Yeah,
It's only one of them, but unfortunately, you just can't have money laying around.
well, no, but,
So, but you can assign it to somebody else and say for them to make the deposit, because there are other people. I mean, elementary school is no different than all the other elementary schools I had in Portland. They had one secretary. And I wrote them up if they didn't. You can give the deposit and you can get one of the lock things and lock it in there. And then the bank has the key, they can unlock it and make the deposit. Those things can happen.
okay.
So there has to be measures that are taken to ensure the safety of the funds that the parents give us.
We should just have a US bank inside our main offices.
No. Nice try though. In Portland Public Schools, all the high schools get deposit or the bank comes through each one of the high schools every day. We don't have that kind of fluid,
Oh,
kind of cash. Now, the middle schools and the elementary, they don't have that.
no.
Theirs is a little bit more frequent than our elementaries, but every high school actually has the bank come to them because of the amount of cash that they have.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? And the auditors were extremely happy with the audit.
The deposit,
Yes,
do
Sonia?
you have days, have you made suggestions about what days to make deposits, like maybe on Wednesdays or Fridays, or do they have to just look at their schedule and make that?
It's up to the school and the principal of how they want to do it. I don't dictate, it's just that they have to do it at least once a week for the elementaries. And if they have one day that is a large amount and it exceeds the limit, they need to make the deposit that day. They may have two that week. But in the guidelines, it says if you're exceeding the dollar threshold, you'll have to make more than just one deposit that week. And there are concessions, and I've had this discussion with multiple principals, why don't have the time? Well, you have a lot of people that actually may go out for lunch. Give them an extra 5 minutes to drop it off at the bank, and the secretary can come back, and they can come back and get the deposit receipts. So, there's ways around it. Does that help?
Yeah, it does, thanks.
All right. The next one is our next process that we're gonna do. This is the resolution that we have to have, and we've had multiple discussions on this. This is the PERS bond. This resolution does not hold you to the fire. What this resolution does is gives our attorney, Ann Sherman, the authority to move forward on our behalf in the group and with our Piper Jaffrey to say that we are making the next step and saying what we need to do. And this resolution, as the board, is saying, yeah, we want to make that next step. Because without that, all I hear is Cherie going, yes, yes, yes. I actually have to have some kind of legal document that says, yeah, what Cherie was saying is okay and we're going to move forward. And that's what this resolution is doing. And this resolution specifically states, and I think in section 2, about us separating and creating a side account, right? The distinguishing factor of what differentiates is we cannot make it in an LGIP account. It will have to be made in a U.S. bank account. So I'll have to create a new U.S. bank account, which is fine, instead of another LGIP account. I have 5 LGIP accounts, and that's where the state manages the money because they're the investment broker. Because I'm so small, I don't have an investment person. They manage those and manage the investments and my interest and where I make more money by going through the LGIP account. The U.S. Bank, I'll have to manage those investments and ensure that I do them on my own, because U.S. Bank will not do them for me. But part of the state authority is they're not going to let me go through LGIP. I'm going to have to create my own U.S. Bank account. And I called the attorney, Ann Sherman, to see if I could change that, and she says, Cherie, you got them to do this, shut up. That's as far as you're going to get to go.
This is for the small amount that we would hold on the side.
Yeah, this is either the 5 or 7 million that we want to set aside, to help us buffer
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
until the
Yes.
side account gets to the point to help us decrease our rate
Yeah.
even further.
Cherry, will we ever know who are the partners or the people that are gonna be kind of put together with us?
I think one is Skepus or something like that. Some,
St. Helens, I think it's St. Helens.
St. Helens.
St. Helens.
And there's another one that's S something, small school district that I knew of.
And from what I mean, when I went through the document, I mean, if one of those default, they don't affect us because this document says we're just responsible for ourselves, we, like those guys.
We're gonna sell it as a mass proceed. So everybody will sell it as one mass bond. However, the liability is individually within each individual school district. Some of the concern was around, let's say, another school district didn't have as good, your rating wasn't as well as mine, or your fund balance wasn't well as mine, is that gonna hinder me? When you get to a large amount of sales and bonds, they're not gonna look at that. They're gonna look at the whole for you. And you're also leveraged by this being taken out of your state school fund before it even gets to me. So that's where the state of Oregon really has a good deal, because it's taken out of our state school fund money before we ever get the payment.
Whoa, back up. The bonds that we are buying,
A part of it, when you look at it, not the side account,
right,
the original bond that you buy.
right,
One of the things it says in this full faith and credit is, part of it has to be that it takes a portion out of your state school fund as your calculation. So the money goes in and it comes out.
okay.
So it's like a flush account.
It's a flush account and the state is who takes it out.
Right, and we are wanting the state's Moody's rating, because they have the highest rating.
Right,
And by them being able to basically take the money in and then take it out for me, that gives me the leverage of the state's Moody rating.
okay, and so as they're taking it in and taking it out, they make the payment to PERS for us?
Well, what they do is then turn around and take it in and take it out, and then put it in my state school fund, and then I make the payment
To PERS.
to PERS.
Okay, so,
It's a convoluted accounting, and I will not go into the GASB because I will put you to
No.
sleep. But it is a true accounting way that it protects us and it protects them.
and then,
And they-
Eric,
And that, so ideally, would be that this account would grow at a higher rate than our first payment, correct?
Not a higher rate.
Or similar?
What the side account, so if I take out $20 million or $25 million, and I put $5 million here,
Uh-huh.
that 20 million will grow at the PERS rate, wherever you set it to PERS, right? So it's gonna reduce my 49 million to 29 million, right? So I will only owe $29 million to PERS. Well, right now I owe 49 million. But that 20 million, a portion of that goes into a side account. And that side account will grow based on the investments. Last year, the investment return was 15%. So anything over that 7.5, now it's gonna be 7.25. So anything above that 7.25 is a growth for that $20 million. We would want that. Now, if it goes below that, that means we lose,
Yes.
okay? Right now, the investment interest rate, I think, is about 5%, 5.5%, because the federal just raised the interest rate, so.
And some of the districts around there, PPS. they didn't-
PPS is not gonna go out for another bond.
but they
Their
have-
side account is way higher than they can actually spend in their side account before the end of, unless we have a huge loss. They are not gonna, they have more money in their side account than they took out. They
So
took out
they-
492 million in their side account, it's just under 600 million.
So they did it a long time ago, and,
They did two.
okay. What about David Douglas, do you know, I mean, David
I do.
Douglas, Raymond, so-
oh yeah,
How
not
many of
good,
them have,
not
do we
good.
know how many districts in this county have?
Uh,
I mean, if you know right now, if you don't
I
know.
do.
Okay,
but it's not, offline.
okay.
Some of it's in the information that we got at those workshops that we shared before these workbooks. It'll tell you some specific.
There is a list of all the 197 school districts, and it will tell you exactly which one of the 197 school districts, and it's not in that. It's actually a separate spreadsheet that was given out. by
That
Piper
shows
Jaffray.
a table of.
There's a table in there with some of them,
Yeah,
but not the whole 197.
right. No, but that table shows.
Yeah, I was gonna say the training information was pretty comprehensive about how it works and the districts that we're looking at that opportunity. So,
And you know, I'm not trying to be, you know, asking too many questions, but I did talk to Mr. Kevin Woods, and he used to be a worship economist, and because I was concerned, I mean, this is a big step, and I was trying to figure out, and he pretty much said, you know, it's not ready yet, but I'm learning, and that's
He
why I'm
said
asking.
what? Whoa, he said what?
Going through this process, in his expertise, he wouldn't recommend it. But you know, I'm not taking it, I mean, I'm just learning. I'm trying to ask more because I want to know more because it's a big step.
I have one of the best brokers and one of the best bankers in the state of Oregon that are my friends, and they are telling me this would be a time to do it.
And I guess my frustration, Eric, is we are being placed in a position right now that maybe if this had taken place earlier. So I don't want to evaluate or comment on previous boards, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, from my perspective, I mean, I want to know. I
that's,
want to know.
yeah,
I want to
I
know.
appreciate
I wanna
that.
know.
The question.
No,
I
you're
wanna ask
asking
the
the
questions.
questions, and I appreciate that.
I mean, and you know, I'm
The
glad that you
deciding
feel that way.
factor is
No,
how much.
I feel
But,
that way.
I mean, I'm still gonna ask.
No, I want you to ask, because knowledge is power.
Exactly.
I will tell you, between Jeannie and myself, we budgeted $100,000 on interest in the general fund. We're at $212,000 this year. So we're managing the interest just on our general fund balances and our eligible accounts and what we go in and out to a way that we can maximize the most money. If we do this and we put money in the side account through the US Bank, we will do the same on our investment brokerage to do the things that we need to do to make money. Okay?
Out
I
of,
can't guarantee what PERS would do, but I
Yeah.
can guarantee what I can do.
Okay,
out of the, is it the first 3 years, you basically, you want to see growth and then you're pretty in the clear?
No.
No.
No. You want to see growth, are you in the clear? You never should say that statement.
No.
Because any one given time, now we knew in 30 years, we only went down 3 times, with the biggest one being in 2008. The other 2 were so small that were a hiccup in the world. But the 2008 was the hugest hit ever to PERS. So are you ever going, should close your eyes? No. You should always watch it. But we hope with the $20 million we can make hopefully a big chunk in our world and come down at least 8 to 10%, because our new rate's gonna be up 6%. And that's about $1.5 to $1.6 million additional expense for next year that we do not have in the budget. That is a guarantee. That is a ticket I cannot get away from. It's already predetermined. So whatever my payroll is, it's $1.5 to $1.6 million in additional costs that I have to pay next year. The money I hope to pay and set in the side account will help buffer that rate increase. And how I do that, I'll have to look at the logistics in the bank, because they have to pay it, or I have to send the invoice to them, and then I pay it. I haven't worked out the logistics, but we will work it out. But one way or the other, I hope to get through at least 3 years with that $5 to whatever $1 million.
Sarah?
Okay?
Sarah's got a question.
You might have answered it in the things that you said a minute ago. As we were learning about this from, gosh, was it December when Carolyn Brandon came and presented to us? And then we went to that training in February, right? And then a group, didn't you go down to a second training in Salem, Dave? The number that I kept hearing about, it's not the interest, the bond rate, 4.5%?
It was 4.5, but the feds have now raised the rate twice.
Over
since
the
that's
last
a-
6 months?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question, was I
Because
saw
we're
that
now at
this-
5.
Yeah,
There's a rate in here, I believe.
5.5 is the rate in
So we
here.
basically, we went up to 5, now I think we're at 5.5.
So if it was over 5.5, we'd be out because then the margins would get so slim it wouldn't. I mean, am I reading this document correctly that we're authorizing up to that 5.5%?
Yes.
And then after that it would be.
So if we make 15 million, I mean, if we make a 15% and we're at 5, hey,
Right.
that's a great sell.
Yeah.
7, you get a 2%. As long as you don't get below that 5.5, then your Parker test is pretty good.
hear ya. It's a big decision and like.
It is a
Lou was
very big
saying
decision and it
earlier,
sits on
your
my
name's
pocket
on the
every
line.
day.
I know it. And I just wanna commend you for your research and your creativity in approaching a solution.
We gotta find a
That
solution to this
has
district
never
because we
been
don't have a
done.
whole lot of money and
Right.
our enrollment's going down, every money that we make in local revenue is going away.
And
So I have to have another venue and it's either this and a local option, I hope, in the future.
So if I'm to understand correctly, this move of 20 million into a side account, 5 million on the side in this US bank account, it's like the Cherie Lewis move. Potentially, I mean. in
There are
that
other
it has-
school districts that are taking this initiative.
Right, but no one has done it as of yet. This is something that we would be blazing the trail on and sort of taking our
I had a
future
lot of
to our
things in the
own.
state I've blazed the trail, so this wouldn't be the first, so don't
Well,
worry.
but just to say, this is something that you worked hard on to
Mhm.
put our future under our control and into our hands and thinking creatively within the rules of public accounting as related to GASB and school accounting.
And people will say it's a little bit of a risk.
Sure,
And the risk can be that I don't make 15% on that 5 million,
right,
okay?
Yep.
But if I don't make 15%, but I still have, my rate doesn't come down enough,
right.
I don't have enough, so I'm gonna have to cut teachers to be able to pay that. So, do I wanna cut teachers, or do I wanna create a buffer to do? So if I take a 10% rate increase, gain versus 15, because I don't do as much savvy investing, I'll take that in lieu of cutting a teacher. That's the risk I'm willing to take.
Agreed.
So along with this thinking, I just want to say thank you for bringing us along over the last 6 months. Because it's been quite a journey learning about this and making investments in public
I
funds.
talk about it a lot
I know
to
it's
the
a
other
small
business
amount of
managers.
responsibility.
Sure. Sonia,
over here.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah, I also wanted to say that sentiment as well, that I appreciate the time and giving us the information, giving us the training, answering the questions, because it is a calculated risk, but it's really great that we're making an informed decision on this opportunity, to have to create the side account. So thank you for all the work on this.
Thank you.
and thank you for working with the state.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, Sherry,
Yes, ma'am.
and I don't need to be a negative Nelly. What happens if we can't pay the bonds off?
Well, you'll have to get creative in the other 16 other funds that I have and what ability I have to leverage those to be able to pay the debt.
It wouldn't be selling Thompson buildings or anything like that.
That is the very last because it's the only leverage we have for repairs and maintenance in this
Right.
district. So you'll be looking at other things. So,
And as, under section 8, under section 6, 1 and 2, the trustee is the US Bank National Association.
yes, because they're the one brokering the proceeds in this agreement, right? And they'll be the banking agency that will make this process. So when I get the proceeds, similar as you did with the selling of the bonds for the
Right,
bond, the capital bond,
right.
you leveraged it through them, they have the proceeds, they take a certain percentage of it, and they manage it through that. It's you have to put it through an FDIC leveraged agency, and that is one of them.
Okay, and that was my question. Last question is, for me, is, will they assist in helping manage the side account, or will Samuel and da-da-da-da assist us?
The side account, at PERS, the PERS will leverage whatever portion we put there.
Right,
The US Bank will be me and whoever is the accountant, and me, and probably Sue at US Bank, who I've worked with for probably 12 years,
Okay.
through my other 2 PERS bonds at PBS. So I've been through this before.
Well, and that's the other piece that I would like to acknowledge, that you have been through this before.
2 at Portland I was involved with, not at the initial sale, but I had 2 other bonds, the capital bonds at Portland that I did. So I have 4 when I did at Portland, so
And Portland did this several years ago,
yes,
when you were still there.
yes.
So you've had experience working
Working with
with,
the state
and
and working with the banking.
the banks, and working with the people that we went to for information
Right.
and training.
Ann Sherman is a good friend of mine. So, and Miss Piper Jaffe and I have been friends for probably 15 years, her and her husband. So, and the 3 of them have been the sellers and financiers and attorneys for every bond that I've done. So,
Okay.
Thanks, Trudy.
the last thing I have is the, part of this year's budget is we have supplemental changes since we had, made this first supplemental in January. This is the second supplemental, and you usually have 1 or 2 a year. So this one basically is all the new grants that we possibly have been given since I did them in January. And any other incremental changes in salaries, people coming out and going in that we could identify. Majority of the change has to do with new grants. And the general fund had to do with a few staffing changes. Nothing great seismic that's in this. As I said in the public notice, it is basically the things that are the new itty bitty little 280 grants that we got. Michael or somebody went out and got some additional money. 215 grants, if we got changes in the title allocations, they changed. Or there were other things that came along. So Title IV is the biggest one that we got that we didn't have. So some of the things that there was a change in the pre-K. So all those little small changes that came up. Any questions about that? And I think one of the biggest changes that we had is looking at private grants changed 44,000. The federal and states grants changed 34,000. And that's where your biggest change of the 78, with those 2 grants, 215 and 280. And the other changes were, in the adopted was changes to the textbook, how we're spending money.
Thank you.
So we can spend it in instruction. Is there any questions on the supplemental budget? Nope. Okay.
No question.
We now have PFA report. Brett's not here. School's out for the summer. OSCA monthly report. Rick's not here. School's not out for the summer for him, but he plays softball. And I see no cards for citizens to make comments. So, saying all of that, I apologize to you, Sonia, because the action items are not going to take 5 minutes, they're going to take more. So,
Okay.
we're going to take a short 5-minute break so people can get drinks, go to the bathroom, and be back here exactly. We will be.
All right, I'm gonna go get some peach cobbler.
8:43.
Oh, peach cobbler.
Oh,
My
man.
mom's homemade peach cobbler, I'll be back.
Oh, your mom's there. Hi, Mom. Yeah, we're back.
All right, I got my cobbler, I'm all good.
Oh, good. Is
Yeah,
it-
that's
is it-
not fun, Sonia, to taunt people with food.
Does it have whipped cream on it?
Oh, no, it's homemade, you don't need anything but just to heat it up a little bit, it's perfect.
So it's a warm peach cobbler.
Oh, yeah, it's delicious.
Okay, well, on June 2nd, July 2nd, I know who's going to bring peach cobbler.
I'll see if my mom can make them in the back and I'll bring it.
Okay. Tell Mom we appreciate it. Action items, friends. Accept or reject revision, meeting back in the order. Accept or reject revisions to district calendar 2018-2019. I need a motion.
I move that we accept revision of district calendar 2018-2019.
I second.
Michael, I do have a question.
Yep.
I kept looking for when kindergarten starts, and I couldn't find a K in there.
It should be Monday, September 10th.
Okay.
Would be the start of kindergarten. And I do know that we have that on the elementary specific calendar.
Okay. And then the full week with no kids at the end?
Yeah, so your end date would be June 6th, that would be the last day of school. Our teachers have 2 contract days that they work based on the collective bargaining agreement, so they would work Friday, June 7th,
Mm-hmm.
and they would work Monday, June 10th,
Mm-hmm.
and their furlough days would be 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and the following Monday, the 17th. Now, that's technically for OEA. For OSEA, it's different because they generally, most of them work when the students are present, so it varies. We do know in some circumstances, we may have a couple of bus drivers who actually aren't furloughed because they are going to be transporting kids that week that we don't have school, but other districts around us will still be in session. We do have some other county districts that are going to be cutting days, but in some cases that hasn't been approved yet.
Yeah.
Probably approved this week, and we're having their looking.
I have a question about the furlough days for the teachers.
Yes,
So you said 11th through the 14th will be the furlough days for, for teachers? Is that what you were saying?
yes, and the following Monday, the 17th would also be, because that 11th through the 14th is 4 days, and then the following Monday, the 17th would be the 5th day.
Okay. And so, in that situation, with the teachers wrapping up the school year, per se, grading, all that, when would that need to be done if they're gonna be furloughed for those days? They'd be doing that without pay?
No, they would be, they have 2 contract days, so the last day of school would be June 6th. Teachers would work
Okay.
Friday, June 7th, and Monday, June 10th. And those 2 days are intended for grades and work.
Got it, okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions? Are you ready for the vote? All those in favor accepting the revision to the district calendar for 2018 to 2019 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Accept or reject intergovernmental agreement, mutual aid, omnibus agreement, emergency assistance, 2018 through 2019. Do I hear a motion to accept or reject?
I move that we accept the intergovernmental agreement, mutual aid, omnibus agreement, emergency assistance, 2018-2019.
Good read.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Does anybody have any questions? Sheree, what districts are involved? Is it just all of Multnomah County?
All Multnomah County.
Sonia, question?
I do have a question. Is this, for, like weather events, the other situation I'm thinking of just escaped me. Any kind of emergency, weather or safety, anything like that, any kind of situation?
So it's kind of like the school district's version of emergency management area. And if we need
Okay.
assistance from another school, the first day is free, and then anything after that, they can charge us for, but they'll come, if we have an emergency like the shooting that was at Reynolds, all the school districts would go over and help for the day, and that's just an emergency assistance, and they're, it's in our emergency assistance package, the phone numbers for all the school districts, so the managers and directors have them.
Got it. And that includes transportation, staff, resources,
Yes.
everything?
So example, when we had the fires, right, I was put on alert for Reynolds because they had 3 schools that possibly had to be evacuated. So I put my facility staff on track in case I needed to pull my vehicles over to Reynolds and evacuate the schools.
Got it, okay.
And Sonia, this is a thing that has been in place for,
15 years at
Yeah.
least.
so this is just usually the last business meeting of the year.
Okay.
No more questions? All in favor of accepting the intergovernmental agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Accept or reject resolution to approve amendment number 2 fiscal year 2017-2018 budget. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept the resolution to approve amendments number 2 fiscal year 2017-18 budget.
A second?
I second.
Okay, I'll give it to Sonia because she's eating peach pie, or peach cobbler. Are there
I
any,
second.
are there any questions that, no? Dave? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of accepting the resolution to approve amendment number 2 fiscal year 2017-2018 budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Accept, reject resolution to adopt appropriate levy and categorize funds for the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget.
I move that we accept.
Eric moves. Do we accept? Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Sarah seconds. Are there any questions?
I do have a question about the, it's not set yet, but the ending fund balance this year, right now, what we approved, the budget committee approved, was a higher number, so.
What's in the budget is $914,000. Right now, we're sitting around $500-some thousand because right now I've underestimated the number for the revenue, under local revenue, and I think I'm gonna win my case for the $400,000 I think I owe for the state school fund. So to be extremely conservative, I've not included the higher revenue for the state school fund, or for the local revenue, excuse me, or the winning of the $400,000. So if I get those, I'm gonna be in great shape. But right now, just to be true to the fact that that's where I am today, that's why it sits at $500,000. But I can guarantee you, it's probably not gonna end at that time.
You are suggesting that you're going to have a win-win.
I always do.
I would really like to have that in the official minutes, please.
It's there.
Well, I know, but the official minutes. Here are no more questions. All those in favor of accepting the resolution to adopt the budget for 2018-2019 signify by saying yes.
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 Yeah.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See, you always win. E, accept or reject resolution authorizing Parkrose participation in the Oregon Education District Pension Bond Program, authorizing a full faith and credit pension bond and related full faith and credit pension obligation to be issued in one or more series.
I move that we accept the resolution authorizing Parkrose participation in the Oregon Education District's pension bond program, authorizing a full faith and credit pension bond and related full faith and credit pension obligations to be issued in one or more series.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I would call that nice reading. Do we have any questions?
Yes, I certainly, we're all here for the rest of the kids. I think what we need to do the best for the kids. And looking at the trade wars that we've been seeing in the past few months, I don't think we're going to the same time as we did just 6 months ago. And I've been seeing a lot of volatility and unpredictability in the markets. Just a few days ago, we got out of the Dow. So I just don't have a good feeling at this point, at this time, and I would certainly get together with Michael and Shari to discuss more about this, but at this point, I cannot support it at this point.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. I mean, we're at a point where we gotta do something. And so I don't like what's on the table, but I'm going to go with it and support it because the option it's not a good option in the future. So we gotta do something.
I'm with Dave on that comment, right? It's a rock and a hard place that we're between, but this is the thing that we can do to help ourselves and to help the kids. And I can understand reservations towards it, but I appreciate the hard work of the staff.
So in response to your comment, if you look at the last 2 weeks, the volatility of the Trump administration's decisions on the Wall Street Journal and the market and S&P have to do with immigration and has to do about his foreign trade committee. So if you look at those two things, that has caused the shift in the market share. Now, the majority of the company, or the big companies that are the things that pretty much PERS invests on, there's not a lot of stocks. So you're looking at things that are more stock-driven design. A lot of the PERS portfolio is not designed on a stock portfolio. Okay, it's designed off a different market. So I get your concern. I truly do, because myself, I even what I do for a living, I have my own financial advisor, strange enough, but I understand it is, but I do read the Wall Street Journal every day. But I get your concern. But I agree to your comment, we have to maybe make the decision that you don't do 20 million, as we call, how many times do you go to the trough? Maybe do it 2 or 3 times. First time, maybe just do $10 million, just to see if, put your toes in the water. But if you do anything less than $2 million, you're really not gonna get a whole reduction in your rate to be able to get something, what's gonna hit you in the next year. So we have to do something. Because that 1.6 plus the additional debt, we do not have the money in our troughs to be able to take that kind of hit.
Sonia?
Oh, yeah, it's not an easy decision, but the thing that I appreciate is that we've made an educated, informed decision. We talked to people who know about these financial matters. We've taken advice from people who had some practice in this area with other districts. We've had lots of opportunity to ask questions, to look at other opportunities, and what comes first is what's going on with state funding. We really have to find our own solution. And although I do have some apprehension, but I certainly feel like we're making an informed decision, educated decision about what's right for the district, and trying to resolve our own issues when we don't really have any other recourse. We can't go back 20 years and do something that was done 20 years ago in another district at another time under other circumstances. We're trying to make an informed decision about today, protecting our school and our kids, providing the type of education we want to provide for them, because there aren't any easier answers for this, and our funding situation with the state is not going to change anytime soon. So I appreciate all the work that everyone in the district put into this. I've studied the information, and I feel like we're making an informed decision, and a good one.
Thank you. I think, Dave, you summed it up succinctly and to the point. What this says is for Cherie and her minions to go forth and come back and present us what we're going to do. This is a directive to go forth. This is not an allotment of 20 million here and 40 million there.
No, this is just giving me the authority to dip my toes in the opportunity until I sign my name to the dotted line. We have not obligated ourselves.
And so, when I look at the joy of the parents and kids who walked across that stage, when I think about what this is all about, and I think about those kids, it scares me, but if I didn't jump occasionally, I would not have be here today. So if there are no more comments or no more discussion items, let's take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the resolution authorizing Parkrose participation in the Oregon Educational District Pension Bond Program, authorizing a full faith and credit pension bond and related full faith and credit pension obligation to be issued in one or more series, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those
Yeah.
opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to future discussion and future agenda items. I would like to bring up the business associations that we are within our district. There's the Gateway Business Association and there's the Parkrose Business Association. Gateway has both Douglas and Parkrose. Parkrose has just basically Parkrose. At one time, the district was part of both entities. And in talking about communication, I have started to go to those meetings. Michael went with me to the Parkrose Business Association and was introduced as the new superintendent and was welcomed with positive statements, et cetera, et cetera. The Parkrose Business Association gave 5 of our students $3,000 scholarships for this coming year. And you know most of the kids who got the scholarships. But their foundation is very generous to our students. 51 kids applied for the scholarships and 5 got $3,000 apiece. So I was very proud as I sat there. I would like us at our next meeting to discuss becoming members again. In the Gateway Business Association, it's $50 because we're nonprofit. In Parkrose Business Association, we tell we want to become a member, and then they tell us how much it is. It pays off because, and I don't know who's going to go to these, something we could discuss in August, but it does pay off in direct communication. At the Parkrose Business Association, there was a discussion, a person kept making comments about these were good kids, not like the kids who graffiti all the time. And it was very opportune for me to say, let's not make sweeping generalizations about the rest of our students, because our students are pretty good kids. And so I found that positive. Gateway Business Association is dealing with what you brought up, the Prosper Oregon,
Gateway Economic Development?
the economic development, the whole thing that some people see it as a continuation, and there's a gentleman who gave me a bunch of papers to share, and then there's what will be the Parkrose role into that.
I think it would be ideal if we all get a gist of what's going on. I mean, I I mean, obviously, we are involved with David Douglas and Centennial and Gresham, and, I mean, we could kind of, I mean, it was a different world when the conversation started. I mean, if we could sort of talk a little bit and see where we are. I mean, I definitely have a perspective. I mean, I didn't follow him. But I don't know if, for example, Dave or Sonia, or the two of you, know, the historical situation of how it got started and how it, what it is right now. But I think it would be ideal that everybody could have that knowledge, so that we can either make a statement supporting IPA, East Portland Action
The
Plan,
action plan.
or not. And so, because that way the city knows whether what the district were interested a few years ago is still relevant today with newer members, not just here and David Douglas. And David Douglas, they go into the same thing. But at least so that the city knows whether we're interested or not, even though we have new members, new superintendents, not just in Parkrose, but also in David Douglas, Centennial, and Reynolds too.
Would you all be in favor of, at our next meeting, having a rundown on the square acreage we're talking about right behind Fred Meyer's? Dave, I'm getting a nod. Sarah's getting a nod.
Absolutely.
Sonia?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I am getting an agreement that at our next meeting,
On Monday.
on Monday, we will talk about Prosper Oregon's preparation. And Michael and I will discuss how we're going to present it to you. But we will give you the initial and what they're talking about now. The other thing I would like to bring up is PBA asked if Parkrose would be involved with the Halloween trunk or treat. And when I pushed them on what they were meaning is because some of the high school students assist with directing people that day. Because,
Oh, I was just. Oh.
so, but there
It's a very
is,
direct request.
yes. And there is a meeting, it's 27th, this Wednesday, signs are now at 2 o'clock. If you guys are okay with it, I will go and find out, get more details for us. And of course, share with Michael, because it's he and the high school who need to. But if you guys are comfortable with me representing us, I will go forth. I'm getting nods here, Sonia, since we don't have Skype yet.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that both the Gateway and Parkrose are concerned about crime and vandalism. GABA has been meeting with East Precinct. Let us remember that if you're below the freeway, you're part of North Precinct. And they are meeting with the police on the 12th at the fire station. I will not be chair on the 12th, but I'm willing to commit to going to that meeting and sharing and bringing back. And the meeting on the 12th of July is from 6 to 8 o'clock.
I'm okay, I have, yeah, thank you.
Yes. Okay, we've got nods here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So, correspondence?
I do have one.
Dave's got one.
What got me interested in this was the chronic absentee grants. And so maybe in August, we get an update on grants that are new or
Sure.
grants that are out. that we're looking
Yeah,
at.
absolutely.
'Cause it's great, but it's kind of like to have that.
Yeah, I can put together like a grant info page, and it's the term of the grant and then what are the actions behind it. So we'll be able to talk about that.
I like it. The other question I have before we do correspondence, any feelings about birthday cakes? we started it, I'm guilty. Because because when Eric and I first got on the board, we needed to do some relationship building. And do you guys want to keep using board budget money to buy birthday cakes?
I mean, this year we spent quite a few. I mean, and I just have, I guess, a personal feeling. I love to kind of keep as much as we can towards the end. I mean, if we let it go, that would be okay with it. But you know, it's up to the group. If you guys, I'm not fine with it too.
I'm impartial, so, I really don't have an. I mean, I have a sweet tooth, but I mean, I don't necessarily need a cake to celebrate.
Sonia, any input?
Well, I could go without it. I mean, personally, I get cake at home, then at work. So you kind of get inundated with it around your birthday. So I could certainly forego it for the benefit of our budget.
Wow, I don't get cake at work or at home.
I'm not much of a cake person, you
I know.
know that.
Okay, so, Sonia,
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Are we also talking about that cakes going to OSCA?
no,
Okay,
just
us.
just the birthday cakes,
Yeah, okay.
board birthdays. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I do.
But you're not on the board, honey. So I will extend a courtesy to you.
The use of buying frequent birthday cakes is really not a standard use of governmental funds. If you buy once a year for the OSCA and the OEA, which we do, that's appropriate, because that's infrequent in nature. But buying them like almost every other month is not what the use of government funds were meant for.
Well,
So,
Thanks for reinforcing their decision.
so the decision is very clear. Because we are an ethical group of people, we will only spend dollars ethically. So, buy your own cupcakes, guys. Taken care of. Andrea, one thing off your plate. Okay, a nice letter from the Wheatley School. And it was in our board packet. I don't feel the need to read it to you. But thank you, the entire district, for your support of our first annual Try All for All games. It was held at the high school. And we have a very valuable relationship is what I read. And we also got a nice letter from the Parkrose Educational Foundation. And that was the LEAP students sent that to the foundation, and the LEAP students all signed it. And if you do nothing at all next year, you gotta visit that classroom. It's amazing. Upcoming meetings, note that on Monday the 2nd, it'll be a 6:00 p.m., not a 6:30. Then we have a retreat on August 16th, and we have a board retreat part 2 on August 18th. Upcoming events, on Friday the 29th, the administrators will be going home, and then Dave's going to Bend. Sonia, you're going to Bend.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Eric is going to Bend.
Yes.
Sarah's going to Iceland, and I am speaking to the class of 1958 at the Colwood.
Michael will
Country
be at a
Club.
wedding.
And Michael will be a best man
That's right.
at a very nice man's wedding.
We'll miss you all, guys.
Yeah, you'd be in the pool. Okay, and any other business for the good of the order? Going once, going twice? Wow, this is my last meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Madam.
You are welcome.